Welcome back to another episode of Agency Edition. This is a toggle series for agency leaders who want to grow their business. Most agency owners expand too fast and they end up breaking things. But some agency owners have figured out how to grow smarter and more profitably without losing their edge. Today, I'm talking to Tom Whatley, the CEO of B2B marketing agency, Grizzle. I've known Tom for years, and when I first met him, Grizzle wasn't the content marketing agency it is today. It was actually a digital PR agency. And over the years, Tom has pivoted Grizzle and built a highly profitable, efficient model by carefully expanding and pivoting the agency's service model when the market and his clients demanded it. In today's episode, Tom shares some critical yet pretty simple strategies about how he has managed to pivot Grizzle when he's needed to. He walks through Grizzle's blueprint for launching new services profitably and the importance of pricing projects correctly from day one. He also talks about how using time tracking systems has been key to improving the agency's operations. If you're running a growing agency and struggling to roll out profitable new services, Tom has some great insights in today's episode. Let's get into it.
So I'm Tom. I run a content marketing agency called Grizzle. We serve B2B and SaaS companies, helping them kind of scale their organic marketing and content marketing programs across editorial content, video and media. Mostly SEO these days, but we are slowly expanding into social and YouTube and things like that. We work on the back end with our clients to kind of improve their lifecycle marketing, I guess would be a great way of putting it. What happens after traffic lands on your website and, converts into a demo or a lead, right? Through email marketing and whatnot. So it's pretty integrated. I think integrated content marketing is kind of the name that we've landed on for our methodology, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. I think I want to just circle back a little bit to the start of Grizzle, because I didn't know this before we jumped on the call, but Grizzle was supposed to be a game company.
So
back at the very start.
I tried starting a bunch of companies over the years, and one of them was a mobile games company, and we made I made a total of $250 in ad revenue, and I was like, okay, I don't have the capital to keep doing this, and so I was working full time, and I came up with this idea for this kind of digital PR service, right? I was helping to grow the agency I was working for at the time, and it's just when the skyscraper technique was becoming a thing, right? Take what's working and make it 10 times longer, which is essentially what the strategy was. And I was doing a lot of guest blogging, getting featured in Content Marketing Institute, Marketing Profs, etc. And someone asked if I wanted to do it for them, and it didn't work out. But I was like, I wonder if this is a service I could sell. But I wanted to set some constraints, right? I didn't want to do what I usually do, which is set up a website, try and get everything in order before trying to get clients or customers. I thought, okay, what's the minimum that we need to do, and what resources can I use? And so I picked up the WordPress theme we were using at the company I was working for, right? I scraped together like 100 manually in a coffee shop on a Saturday, 100 MarTech marketing leaders, because obviously I was getting featured in marketing publications. And then I was like, okay, the rule is use things that I already have. What domains do I have? And Grizzle was there. So it worked. Here we are. And it has stuck. The company that should have been a mobile game company is now a B2B SaaS content marketing agency.
Your first early pivot.
You could call it that.
Yeah. How did you land on digital PR as your first service offering? Was it just where you had your experience, or?
Yeah. So like I said, someone expressed interest in doing it for them. And again, it didn't really work out in the end. So I thought, well, if I kind of treat this it's just when the productized service trend was really kind of kicking off, right? It's like treating your service business as a SaaS company. And I was like, I could do that. I think I could, build something that's really narrow, really specific. We're doing it. We have proof. We have access, right? We had access to all these editors. And so, yeah, I kind of whipped it up, and I had this constraint, again, reach out to this 100 person list. And if at least one of them became a sales appointment within 2 weeks, I'd keep going. And, ended up over the course of maybe 90 days, 5 of those converted into clients. So it's kind of a gut thing, but also having the resources and then validating it accordingly.
Yeah. I think those kind of looking for an early MVP, I guess you'd call it, as like a service offering. Is that something that you try to do validate something on like a really small scale and then expand it, or?
100%. And we still do it today, right? Because if you look at Grizzle now, we are, like I said, integrated content marketing. Digital PR is still part of it, but it's one piece of like a broader service offering. And so whenever we kind of get an inkling that, okay, the market's moving this way, shall we follow it? Or perhaps we're being asked if we do certain services, we'll do it on a small scale first. And now that we have a existing client base, loyal clients, we can kind of go to the ones who kind of already trust us, have an appetite for the thing, and we'll do it for them, right? As kind of like a bit of a pilot project. First of all, they pay for it, right? So that's kind of validating it in a sense. But yeah, it allows us to kind of build out those processes and just, you know, work on it behind the scenes. So we are kind of privileged in that we can do that. But I would probably do things very similarly. I would do the thing first, either for, you know, in the early days, I was doing it for my employer, the agency that I was working for at the time. And then kind of, you know, I've already got the chops. I've already got the social proof because I'm doing it. And then you just need to find those, you could call them early adopters, right? People who want it, who believe in you. Obviously, you know, you would be pricing it at a significant discount. I think back in the day, for like 2 guest posts in these, you know, DA 80 plus publications, it was $799 for 2 articles. It was cheap as, but that's kind of what you have to do in order to kind of get that initial traction, get the results. Yeah.
I'm gonna just on the back of that, I'm gonna dig up. I found an old CXL article you wrote. I think it was like 5 years ago about the topic that we're talking about, pivoting your agency. And you had this like nugget that I pulled out that I thought was really interesting. You wrote, eventually you'll come to a crossroads where expanding is an attractive and lucrative option. You end up pivoting not only your service offering, but the people you serve and your value prop. If your network is expressing an interest in additional services, pivoting is a no-brainer. So is that kind of what happened to Grizzle going from a PR agency, a digital PR offering to an integrated marketing? Like, what did that decision process look like?
Yeah, again, it was the demand from our clients at the time. So again, we were creating a lot of good editorial content and we were getting, I can remember this particular client actually that was really the apex for what Grizzle would then become. We were creating a lot of great content for them under their byline for folks like Search Engine Land and Shopify and all these other like reputable publications and blogs and brands in the space. And then they weren't happy with their supplier and they just looked at what we were doing and said, well, clearly this stuff is good. Why don't you just write for our blog, right? And that's kind of like the first step that kind of started us off down the end-to-end content and SEO, I guess, in those days track. So again, it comes down to kind of listening to your clients. Clients will kind of come to you and ask, you know, can you just do this for us as well? It was a natural progression for us. But another example is video content right now, right? Our track record is purely editorial and SEO, really. But clients have been asking us for video and even podcasts, right? And so it's like, okay, the market is moving that way, especially if you look at the attitude towards SEO content right now.
It's kind of bleak.
Which a little bit, right? Like you can create some, quite frankly, shitty SEO content, but you can at the click of a button. And it's done. So it's like, okay, how do we kind of protect ourselves against that, but also like diversify things and really kind of meet the demand of the market and SaaS marketers and our clients in general. And like video has been one of those things, but it's been a longer journey. I think it took us about a year to start building out the track record behind the scenes, getting together an offer. So yeah, I think it comes down to if your clients are asking for something over and over again, if you're hearing those things in sales calls as well, that's a really good sign. And also, yeah, really having your finger on the pulse of the market. If something's moving in that direction and you think that perhaps even, you know, this is something that we can do, or what we're doing right now is at risk, then I think that's a good opportunity to either expand or pivot slightly.
So you're looking for internal sales calls, feedback from your own clients. I'm assuming that you're watching things on, you know, LinkedIn, people talking about things, but how do you not get caught up in just going after every little thing being like, oh, no, but video will be like a good offering and maybe this is not something that we're interested in doing?
Yeah, I think it comes down to strengths, first of all. access and knowledge within like that ecosystem. So for example, with video, it's kind of a natural add-on because a lot of it is kind of additive to what we're already doing. Think about content writing, right? And SEO. So we write a lot of landing pages. We've done, hundreds over the years. Well, we could also really create explainer videos to go with those, right? It's kind of like additive to what we're already doing. I think you do have to scrutinize, I think, what the zeitgeist, what's in the zeitgeist. To your point, on LinkedIn, on a social, everyone has an opinion. People kind of love agreeing with them. But what people say and what they do off of social are two completely different things. You'll see so many people talk about how SEO is dead, budgets are shrinking, yada, yada, yada. But our clients and even kind of like, our competitors, they're talking about how their clients are investing more in SEO. So it's you've got to kind of really look at it through a critical lens before making some of those decisions. But then you've also got to have an honest look as like, is this our strengths? And sometimes you won't know that until you try it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of things that we've tried over the years. We tried really diving into social, kind of creating Twitter content and whatnot, because an old team member of ours was really good at it themselves. And we thought, well, let's try and productize this. And it just didn't work. So try things, know when to drop the ball or kind of forget about it and then move on accordingly.
What are you kind of giving those projects as a runway to see if they work or not? Like, for example, the Twitter offering. Did you say we're going to give this 6 months, roll it out to a couple of clients and then see how it works? Or like, how are you measuring that and deciding, pull the plug or keep going?
That's a really good question. I think it comes down to, are you getting results from doing that thing? As a content marketing agency, right? The marketing word is still there. You need an outcome. Are clients happy with the work that we're doing? Is it profitable? Can we scale this as well? And so the timeline can be a little bit, it can be a bit of a guess, right? Like how long is too long? If you still think that, okay, maybe we should continue down this path, but pivot slightly to the left or slightly to the right, I think you got to make those decisions based on feedback from your clients. Yeah.
And I guess it also depends on just being upfront with them, right? Twitter's a good example of you might have started something there at the start of 2024, and by the start of 2025, the algorithm has changed, the content on there has changed, the expectations change. They're constantly changing the rules. So I guess part of it would be just communicating with clients and being upfront about what's realistic. I think there is a thing in all marketing, but content marketing as well, where people think they have to be everywhere all at once. They have to do Twitter, they have to do LinkedIn, they have to do X, Y, and Z. So I guess I'm going to throw it back to you. Like, how do you manage those expectations when you're rolling something new out?
Yeah. I mean, just to go one step back as well, to your point, algorithm changes, what people respond to are different. It's not just about how you communicate it. Do you have the chops and the capacity to keep on top of that yourselves? You've created this methodology, you've created these processes, right? Especially with social, it's constantly changing. Do you have the ability to kind of roll with the tide and change those? So there's that. But I think in the question, you've kind of hit the nail on the head as well. Like, you have to communicate those expectations right from the very beginning. I think, and that's what the key thing from the very beginning. Instead of saying, yeah, we're going to get you all these results, yada, 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 promise them the moon, and then later on down the line, being like, oh no, LinkedIn's changed their, discovery algorithm from network-based to interest-based, whatever. It's kind of like, okay, talk about those experiences and those expectations right from the initial conversation, right? That as a client communication kind of approach or tip, you could call it, has changed the way that we approach relationships with our clients. When I figured that out, things became a lot easier when things went wrong or when things changed, especially in the world of SEO, right?
So you're doing that from the initial get-go. And then I guess we could roll this into your content SEO offering at the moment as well with all the Google algorithm changes. Is this something that you're constantly updating them on? Like every time Google rolls out an update, which seems like every day, are you are you messaging them and saying, this is what this might mean and here's what we're doing? Or how do you approach that?
That's an interesting one, because if you're too reactive, then I don't think you're doing it right in the first place. Over the last, 10 years, the rules when it comes to SEO hasn't really changed that much. Build authority, provide great content, give people the most complete answer to their question or query. Obviously, AIO is changing things. There's been a lot of communication around that. So when it's like a seismic shift in the sense that, okay, it looks like consumer or buyer behavior is changing. It looks like, clicks are dwindling, which is true. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. Yes, definitely communicate it. But our strategy has always been around providing like a sensational, I guess, answer, creating like the best piece of content on a particular topic, but also aligning with revenue. And I think the way that people search for solutions isn't going to really change that much. And so by this, we talk about demand capture and bottom of funnel content, right? People are still searching for, complex solutions, project management software or time tracking platforms, right? People are still searching for that. People still want those kind of more in-depth guides. And so while we're seeing clicks drop, we're not seeing revenue, user signups, demo requests drop as a result. So that's an interesting one, I think. But to your point, yeah, it's kind of, I wouldn't be too reactive if a client asks, or should we be worried about this? We refer them to the graph. We say, everything's working as it should. This is just business as usual. If it's seismic, then maybe there's some communication around that.
Yeah, I think the focus on revenue and just like actual results is interesting. I'm sure you've seen all the hoopla on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about HubSpot and the great drop and all this. And when I seen that, I don't want to like go too far off the radar here, but when I seen that, I thought, oh, everyone's got such a short memory, right? HubSpot used to be the blog that everyone wanted to write for. It was kind of like the authority on like so many topics. And then everyone was like, oh, see, top of the funnel content, it doesn't work. And this is why. But then a lot of HubSpot marketers came out and said, yeah, but our results are still there.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Which goes back to your point, right? As long as you've got the results to back it up internally with your clients, that's all that matters.
People are responding to a graph that uses third-party data to measure a vanity metric. So there's, I think it was Ryan Law from Ahrefs who kind of posted that, and what a great little PR piece that ended up being, probably very undeliberately. But that's just it, right? It's just a graph. Doesn't matter that much.
And I guess you could like use that analogy in a lot of aspects of the conversation we're having now. Do you have clients coming in and saying, I've seen this competitor's doing this, I've seen their results doing this? How do you handle that as someone that's trying to move into new services and offering these core services? Is there like an educational conversation that has to happen there between you and the clients to say, yeah, but this might not be the thing that is going to drive results if you come back over here and focus on this?
Yeah, oftentimes.
Is there like an educational? Sorry.
There's definitely an educational piece there. And that usually comes back to, okay, what does the strategy say? Mm-hmm. What's the roadmap that we've kind of laid out? Does this align with it? Because it's very easy to get distracted by shiny objects. And luckily we don't often, come across this, but we will get questions about, hey, our competitor's doing, a glossary, right? They're creating all this content for these like definition terms. Oh, that looks like a good idea. Maybe we should do that. And then to that I say, well, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to attract people who are searching for what is time tracking, for example? Or are we trying to attract people who are either in market or are looking to solve a problem or job to be done that your product specifically solves? And so if it doesn't, then we ignore it. Even if it does align, then we still ignore it because we don't know what has necessarily informed that. I prefer to find inspiration from non-competing brands when it comes to things like this as well, right? What are other people in the space doing who are smart and are very kind of open about what they're doing and what they're talking about? But really, it comes down to, does this align with our strategy? And is it going to help us get to this end goal faster and more efficiently? Usually the answer is no.
Yeah. And I guess we could like go back to when we're talking about service offerings. I guess that comes up a lot, in the last couple of years. I'm sure there's been lots of people that have come to you and said, we need to do video. We need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And you mentioned before that video wasn't an overnight decision. I think you mentioned 12 months it took you to kind of like think about it in the back end and roll it out. I'm intrigued what happened over that 12 months.
I could probably say it was longer because we tried having a go at it in 2020, just as the pandemic was kicking off. I was having many conversations with a friend who's worked, with likes of Disney and Netflix, and we were just talking about video content in general. And we're like, you know what, the B2B world could use some of this. And then we tried it and it didn't work. The market wasn't ready. We didn't really have a lot of credibility in that space. It was going to take a long time. And back then we had other priorities, right? Now, we kind of revisited this at the beginning of 2020, where are we now, 4? And it was like, okay, maybe this is the right time. And I think a client of ours asked if we could help create and explain a video for a particular line of products. And so I went back to my friends, like, should we have a crack at this? And then it kind of went from there. And so we kind of worked behind the scenes, working with clients on different content formats, also doing it for ourselves. We started a YouTube channel, which we've kind of neglected, but we're about to kind of kickstart again, in order to kind of okay, let's do this thing, because actually this is going to benefit us. First of all, we can create this video content for ourselves. We like to use this phrase at Grizzle, do the thing to sell the thing, DTST, right? It's kind of like, let's create a piece of original research and then show clients how we can kind of do it. But I think the reason it took so long is, again, just video is quite a complex format. And so it's just kind of getting it right, communicating to clients what the value is, if they aren't the ones who have kind of come to us. And then, just kind of slowly but surely taking pieces of it to market. It's become more of a account expansion tool than something that we sell on the front end. It's something that we mention during sales calls, if it's contextual within the priorities of the prospect, right? But oftentimes it will be, 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, where it will come up naturally as like, well, actually we do this. So
when you said you first tested it and you said the market wasn't ready, what indicators were you getting that this was something that you should have be offering back in 2020?
Yeah, I think what indicators were I getting that made me believe that it was right in 2020? Is that the question?
Yeah. What made you think in 2020, this is something that we should be offering? This would be cool for our clients. This is something that could really add to their results.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it was looking at some of the top SaaS brands were already kind of doing it. But it was a hard sell for a lot of them. And I think also the timing. In 2020, everyone was indoors and the budgets were just all going to editorial content and SEO, right? The demand for search kind of went up. And so it's like, well, we should really just focus on this thing that we're already doing and milk this for all it's worth. So I think there was some demand around that time, but I don't think we were the right people to fulfill that demand. Now demand has kind of grown. A lot more people are talking about short form content when it comes to, platforms like LinkedIn, even, YouTube Shorts and whatnot. I think YouTube SEO people are in the B2B space are starting to get it. And I think it was just kind of like, okay, let's kind of commit to this, use it as an account expansion opportunity and kind of ride the wave as we're seeing demand increase, as it were.
Do you think there's a certain level that a lot of clients are waiting for something to become mainstream or for something to become comfortable? You mentioned back in 2020, there was already a couple of SaaS businesses doing video, but do you think it takes a lot of adoption for people to be ready to invest actual budget into these things?
The larger the marketing team, the more reactive they are versus proactive. It's just a correlation I've seen. And I think their strategy is a lot more conservative. I think they want to focus on what has been working and slowly experiment with new things. We're slowly now, as the content and the organic growth space is becoming a little bit more turbulent, there is more of an appetite to kind of really try some new things. But I think there's probably a organizational thing there that kind of influences what the appetite is for trying some of these new things, right?
I mean, I guess it goes back to what we were talking about before, results. You never know what's going on internally with companies and what the decisions are between bringing an agency on or hiring a freelancer or whatever it is. So, I mean, it could be something to do with that. There's more of a pressure to show that something's going to work immediately rather than, let's just try something and maybe it'll fail.
100%, 100%. People have numbers to meet. They've got careers to protect if they're not contributing to user signups, sales pipeline, whatever it is, whatever the priority, whatever the metric they're being measured against, they're a little bit more bearish.
Yeah. I just want to just ask a couple of more kind of in-depth questions about the video
Please.
service offering. And, we've said that you tried it in 2020, it failed, and then you tried again in 2024, and something that you're offering now. What is the decision-making process for you and the agency to hire someone? Is that happening in-house? Is it a fractional hire that you're making? And what kind of numbers are you running against the hire or the person that will be coming in or the people that will be coming in, and that service offering based on, market conditions and what competitors are doing as well?
Really good question. So for me, I always start with freelancers and contractors, right? Someone who's really good at it that I can trust. And I was pretty lucky with the video side of things because I already had someone in my network who could do that. We talked about this at great length over the years. And so he's been working with me. He's a freelancer already, so fractional was a no-brainer. He's really embedded himself into kind of like the processes, building out the processes with us, doing the work itself. It's just one person, or rather it was one person, right? And then as we started kind of expanding, we needed to kind of build a freelancer bench. So freelance editors, motion designers, animators. We'll soon be looking for a producer, perhaps even a videographer later on down the line. We have a slew of voiceover artists that we can kind of tap into. It's very low risk when things are still kind of emerging and we're still taking things to market. The plan is, and we're in the process of bringing that guy in-house. He will be kind of our video media lead. He's built out the processes. It makes perfect sense, and he wants to be here. He always did. And so, yeah, it's kind of finding a way to be flexible, low risk, while also kind of respecting the talent and their needs and what they want as well, if that makes sense. So I think it's kind of like, I'm a big fan of building out a bench of people that you need before you need them. And then kind of hiring in-house once like the demand is so high that it makes a lot of sense to have that seat in-house because it's more profitable. Oftentimes you'll find that they just embed themselves into the client more. They care a little bit more. Again, it depends on the freelancer, but yeah.
So you're doing a proactive approach where you're getting this fractional help or the freelancer help to come in and kind of assist you with building out that strategy.
100%.
Yeah. And then if it works out, you like to hire people to come in, don't you? I know that there's a few people that work in Grizzle that were freelancers that you got to come in-house. Is that kind of a strategy that you've learned from that these people, as you said, they care a lot about the clients? Do you think it helps to bring that person in-house in terms of like the strategic back end because they've helped build it? It's easier to expand it that way, that you've got this person that initially built out the MVP offering. They're in there, and that, do you just hand over the keys and say, you know what you're doing? Like, I trust you.
Pretty much, yeah. And, I think everyone in-house right now, I poached as freelancers. They freelance for us first. And we just kind of built this culture that's, it kind of protects the lifestyle that they wanted as a freelancer. And so it's kind of like a no-brainer. They have the security. They learn a lot with us. But yeah, so for example, Jenna, my head of content, she started as an editor. She started becoming kind of like the arbiter for all things quality content, the gatekeeper. She was already embedding herself into our client accounts and what they do, and the specificity and the technical elements of it, but also the processes of Grizzle. As a freelancer, she was also building out some of those processes with us. So to your point, handing the keys and saying, run with it, it was an absolute no-brainer. I don't think it's the best way to grow beyond where we're at now. At some point, I'm going to have to go into the broader talent pool, but it has worked really well at an early stage, whether that's, something that we've already been doing or like this video and media arm that we're building out now.
Mm-hmm. Is it a struggle in terms of like, not only how would I say, in terms of making sure that you have enough people in Grizzle to service this new offering.
Mm.
How are you balancing managing the freelancers at the initial start of the project, making sure that it is profitable, if that's what you're gunning for? How are you managing all these moving parts in the back end while you're trying to roll out this new service and make sure that the clients understand that you're capable of rolling it out? How are you balancing kind of the back end profitability? Are you aiming to make money off the new service when you roll it out? Or is it something that you're just, in 12 months' time, let's see where it is?
It has to be profitable from the get-go. We definitely offer kind of a discount on newer services for those early adopters, very similar. Not quite $7.99 a month for, two pieces of content, but there's definitely some kind of concession. We kind of promise to lock them in for either life or the first X amount of months. But it has to be profitable, I think, because I just don't think it works otherwise. You can't make other strategic bets around that service offering, right? If something goes wrong, if we need to kind of pivot accordingly, if for some reason Riverside isn't working for us and we need to go for a more expensive platform for whatever reason, we want to have that kind of wiggle room. And I think, it's just good business sense, right? If you're going to bring a new service to market, then it should probably be profitable, especially if you're selling it to people that already trust you.
Yeah. Is it difficult for you to manage that, as you're getting off the ground with fractional help, with freelance help, capacity-wise, and making sure that all the pieces align and you're still able to deliver things on time, quality? I'm assuming it's quite difficult at the start.
It can be. I think this is where I'm a big fan of, even though we are almost kind of positioning ourselves as a end-to-end content marketing agency, we still productize the majority of our services. And I think doing that from the very beginning, so having a process, here's the deliverables that you get, here's how much it costs, how much does the resourcing cost for that? Someone who's going to kind of lead it, but then those individual editors as well. What's the hourly rate? Let's look at our time tracking data and, see, okay, how long does it take on average to produce, animate, and edit and explain a video? Okay, therefore on average it costs this much. What do we need to mark it up at the beginning in order to make it profitable, right? I think also having someone who's going to just kind of orchestrate some of those pieces, at least, at this stage that we're at, makes sense as well. So my video and media lead, for example, he takes care of the editors, designers who kind of work on, various elements of it. But he was kind of doing it all at first. So it was one-to-one at first, and now it's kind of one-to-one, and then he's kind of like managing those other resources. So I think there's a time tracking and data driven element to it from a resourcing perspective, and then also really just starting off slowly and then delegating it to the right person.
So you're tracking how long everything takes from organization and strategy, I'm assuming, with the client, the actual production, the actual editing, delivering the final product, and then that's packaged together. But how do you do that at the start when people are freelancing and you're not quite sure? Are you using benchmark data or?
Yeah, usually an estimate from the freelancer. They'll probably know, right? You'll say, you'll come to them. You need someone who's done it before. It's not just someone who's like, okay, well, I'll give this a video thing a go. They've been through the weeds. They know how long it takes to produce a 90-second explainer video or a 12-minute YouTube video or a 30-minute podcast episode. And they can tell you, okay, how many days goes into it, for example. Video folk love the day rate rather than the hourly rate, right? How many hours will it take? That kind of thing. And you can kind of estimate from there. It's a bet at the very beginning, right? It doesn't always work out. It's not always profitable, but you've got to aim for it to be profitable because otherwise it just doesn't make sense.
And once you are comfortable with that offering, you've rolled it out, people like it, existing customers are picking it up, and then you're mentioning on new client calls. What kind of profit margin are you looking for on these services if you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think on the resource we're looking at least 50%, at least. I think at the very beginning we'll take 25 to 30, but like at the service line level, it's got to be at least 50 in the long term anyway. As an agency, we aim for 25 to 35% across the year as an agency, right? So you need to, really think about your numbers there.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where all the other pieces slot in if you've built it up correctly. The freelancers are, they're logging this amount. Your in-house media expert, they're running the program. And then if it's a gradual build up and you hit that 50, I guess that's like a green light, something that you can keep on the books. And
Pretty
I just seen
much,
you're rolling something new out, right?
Yeah, which one? There's a few things we're working on at the
Right.
moment.
So we've got videos.
Yeah.
We've talked about that in depth. And now I think I seen on your LinkedIn you're rolling out a new creative as well.
So
creative service.
We've built out a creative services arm on the back end, and that's more of a value add to things that we're already doing. So going back to the editorial content side of things, a lot of our clients wanted infographics and whatnot. And yes, they have the design shops to do it in-house, but when we said, well, we could just do it for you because we have designers, it just made sense. And we just started doing it, right? We've kind of folded it into our standard content production model, but we also have kind of like an add-on service if they want more than the 1 or 2 infographics within their blog article. So it's very much like a back-end service. We're not going to kind of like advertise design services. We don't really want to do that. It's kind of like, how do we embed design into what we're already doing? Just because, again, our clients wanted it, the market wants it. To be honest, our competitors do it as well. So kind of got to catch up. But we want to do it in a way that maintains our quality standards, which we've managed to do so far.
How does squeezing in something like that into an existing workflow, does it impact delivery times? I mean, and what I mean by that is a client that you're already working with that is just doing content. Yeah. And then you offer the creative aspect. So yeah, add that on. And then they also want a video for that as well. How does that impact delivery times and your in-house processes? I'm assuming it's not as easy as just slotting it in, on the project management tool and being like, yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so there's a couple of elements to this with the creative services arm specifically. It's kind of at the end of the process. So what we were already doing is when writing an article, an editor or the writer would kind of recommend something to be designed up. Either, something that's already out there we can design ourselves in a better way, or visualizing a complex idea. So we were already recommending that. All we do now is just ask the client if they would like us to do that. And then once they sign off, we do that on the tail end of the project workflow. In terms of how do we make it happen, we kind of created it. We bolted it on into our operations, right? So it's almost like an in-house design service where an editor or a strategist will request a design asset, and then there's a 2-day SLA between the designer or the creative services team and the content marketing team to actually get it. And then it's up to the editor to kind of ship it to the client, as it were. So it's kind of bolted on quite naturally, but it doesn't always work out that way.
A nice little upsell at the end of the deliverable.
Essentially, yeah.
I think it's smart because it's low risk, right? Or low buy-in. They don't need to go and jump in a meeting with you or ask, Tom, can I add this on?
Yeah.
By that end of the process, they've probably got full confidence that whoever's been working on the project already has significant expertise by that point. So for them, it's probably like a no-brainer just to add it on.
Exactly.
That's smart. I like it. There was something I wanted to ask you again. I did dig through your old CXL article.
Excellent.
There was something that you mentioned about pivoting services vertically or horizontally. Now, I won't remind you what you wrote, but you were recommending that agencies, when they pivot to a new service, either vertically or horizontally. I'm wondering if you still have an opinion on the best way.
I'm trying to remember what I meant by that. It's such a long time ago.
I know. Who am I digging up your old CXL articles?
Could you give me another hint as to what I was talking about there?
I think in the context of it, your argument was that agencies tend to spread themselves too thin So they might want to do, 5 different service offerings at once, right? And then on the flip side, that there is an opportunity for agencies to just really hone in to what they're already doing really well. And I guess vertically, you might have meant just what we were just talking about with the creative, right? I mean, that's quite a vertical offering. That's something that you're just putting on the end. Whereas I guess horizontally, what we've been talking about is there a risk that agencies are just jumping on the next new thing because it's like they feel like they have to be offering it. So I'm just wondering, as an agency owner, what you've seen over the last couple of years, and if you think there's a risk of going horizontally too quickly.
Yeah, there absolutely is. It's not having the chops or the capacity to do it properly. It's like us starting to offer, I don't know, pay-per-click ads with the talent we have in-house, or with like one freelancer. And again, it could work, but it would have to work slowly. Whereas, like you said, offering creative services around what we're already doing vertically just kind of makes sense as a natural progression. And I think there might come a time in the agency life cycle where it does make sense to start offering different channels, because depending on, what type of agency you are, you could be, productized services like Superside or whatever, or you could be, a full house agency where people buy into how you think and your strategic thinking, and it just so happens that you do pay-per-click and SEO and social ads. I think there's definitely a risk of moving too quickly. I think there's also a risk of moving too slowly, though, and it's up to you to find out the pace that you can go at, how much capital you have behind you, and also to kind of invest in those things, right? I reckon we might get to a point, and this is the goal one day, where we get to 10 million ARR, where we can be like, let's start building out a small team around this thing, like get buy-in first, again, sell it before you actually do it, but, kind of get some talent, but like really invest in it. And then put some capital behind actually marketing it as well. But we're not there yet, and I don't think Grizzle ever will be. I don't think I want it to be. So I think it really depends on like, what's your greater vision for the agency? And just kind of moving slowly and steadily. We came to a point where we grew too quickly a few years ago, and it's like, look at all this revenue. And then 6 months later, we kind of burned a couple of clients just because, hey, we couldn't kind of keep up. So lesson learned, and there was an operational lesson to be learned there as well on the back end. But you don't learn that lesson until you do it, no matter how many people tell you. But yeah.
Do you think there's like a sweet spot that you've hit, that you're niche enough without being too niche? And what I mean by that is, I think there's a couple of different agencies, models. There'll be one that's like super niche. They just do this one thing. And then there'll be one that does anything under the sun, PPC ads, video, whatever. And there's an argument like, how well are they really doing that? Do you think the service offering you've got right now, it's pretty honed in, and it's based specifically on what people are asking for? It's not just because you feel like you have to be offering something. It's based on like your clients. Do you think that's like your sweet spot, that you're not trying to do too much and you're not trying to do too little?
I think so. I think whenever we have an appetite to try something new, we would do it on ourselves first. The YouTube stuff being like an example of that. And the justification of doing it needs to be, will it help us grow? Will it help us to kind of improve other processes elsewhere? Are there other tangential benefits, right? Will it help us access a wider audience, etc., etc. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's kind of about, do you try and do all of these things and don't do any of them well, versus doing something a little bit too specifically? We're going through a repositioning exercise at the moment, and one kind of thing that came up as a suggestion is, as an entry ramp, doing like offering on the front end nothing but content repurposing. And I think there was a bit of bias from the people we were working with, because they want that, but strategically offering that and then selling things on the back end, because the content marketing SEO space is super competitive. But I think there's nothing wrong with that approach, as long as what you're offering on the back end you can do well. And I think you have to put the reps in first before you can do it. Where I see people go wrong is, trying to do everything, saying yes to everything, not trying those things slowly, honing it in, and then just burning client relationships, right? I think
because I'm assuming it's a small world, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. People talk to each other. It happens. And it's not always the agency's fault, but it often is.
That's spicy. I'll keep that bit in. I did read as well while I was prepping for this interview that you did a failed pivot into e-commerce and consumer tech.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah. We kind of dabbled in it. The appetite isn't there. I think we got introduced to a really cool client, so an entrepreneur based here in the UK. She co-founded a really popular furniture brand and started what became Headspace for sexual wellness. Essentially, like they used the same development team to build Headspace, but it was specifically for that, and it was cool. It was interesting, and we started developing all of this content. And the founder just didn't really understand why we were writing content the way we were. There was a bit of headbutting, and we thought we would try and focus on, okay, SEO is our thing. Let's broaden our net across consumer-facing markets. And we dipped our toe in, and the reception just wasn't as good as it is for B2B and SaaS. Part of that could be because of our positioning. We work with nothing but SaaS companies. Part of it could be the market. I know plenty of content and SEO agencies that focus on e-commerce, but it was failed. Not in that there was no appetite for it, but we just didn't have what we needed in order to go the distance and really get and penetrate into that market. We got too greedy, I think, is what happened, and so we just dialed into what we're known for and what we're already good at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there could be an argument about educational, offerings again. Maybe it was a case of, in the B2B space, B2B SaaS space, there's, most people that are coming to you, I guess, would know the bare basics of SEO and why content matters and X, Y, and Z. And I don't know, maybe in a new space, there just isn't that educational knowledge there around why certain types of content work, or why you need, a baseline for your SEO to work in the first place.
100%.
But yeah, it's super interesting that I just read it and I was like, I'm going to ask Tom what happened.
Yeah, that was necessary. That was it. But then you see, agencies like Rise at 7 who are solely they position themselves as a creative first search agency. And they work with some of the biggest retailers in the UK. So the appetite was there. It just wasn't us. We weren't the ones to fulfill that demand.
And I guess it's another interesting way to say, yeah, you do SEO and you specialize in SEO content, but for a certain industry or a certain customer, right? Not all customers, which kind of goes back to my point that I was talking about just before about offerings and just making sure that it's, to a certain customer base. You can't do everything for everyone, right? So yeah, in that sense, I guess your sweet spot, it kind of doubled down that what you're doing is where you belong in a nice way.
Pretty much, yeah, 100%. And I think, now we've had this conversation, I think that might be what I meant by vertical versus horizontal. Instead of vertical, I guess, really extreme example going from B2B to e-commerce, it could also be, subsections of the B2B world. It's like us going from SaaS to services, right? Whereas we've stayed SaaS, and now we're just kind of offering complementary services within that vertical and within what we're already doing. Content marketing, video, again, a natural progression in the content marketing space, and we want to ride it and we want to offer that, and so far so good.
Have you hit any roadblocks with rolling any of this out, not just the video, but the creatives and even other services that you've rolled out? And by roadblocks, any lessons that you could pass on, any nice information?
Yeah, dude, how much time do you have? I mean, roadblocks usually comes in the form of, finding the right talent in the first place. Again, got pretty lucky with the guy who's in my network and, Adam, who I'm building this whole thing out with. It comes down to finding the right talent, getting buy-in as well with newer prospects. If you're taking a fresh thing to a completely new market versus an account expansion opportunity, it's really kind of like selling the vision versus that you are the people who can do it. I suppose there's a cart before the horse again. you do have to kind of showcase like why you are the right people to do it and what the end product will look like. And that's kind of where you need to partner with some of these freelancers and fractional experts. Yeah, I think the biggest barriers and the biggest points of friction is always kind of going to market, having to start slow in order to kind of build out the proof of concept, I suppose, and finding the right talent and knowing what's right and what's wrong. You know, for us, when it comes to the editorial content side of things, we have a really specific methodology, which feeds into like one of our biggest core behaviors, our core values, which is, you know, making sure quality is unparalleled. And so it's like, how do you maintain that, especially when stepping into new services and formats? So yeah, talent and go to market broadly, two biggest ones.
How are you positioning your rollout? I don't think I've asked you that yet. For a new service, like what goes into it? Is it just a LinkedIn post like, hey, this is what we're offering? Or, you know, I guess a lot of it starts in those conversations with the customers you already have. But on a broader scale, when you're announcing that you're doing this, what does that look like? And you know, the organization behind that?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said earlier, with video and media specifically, it's very much more an account expansion opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it on LinkedIn. Adam has become kind of like the face of all things video because I've still got my lane, which I talk about SaaS marketing and kind of SEO and content in general. If I threw video into the mix, for me, it wouldn't make much sense. But like we do, announce some of these things. I think we announced the video offering towards the end of last year. But it's just kind of like sending a signal out there. It's not a concerted go-to-market effort. That might come later because we're still building out our, proof of concept around this. We've got a bunch of projects under the belt, but I don't think we're ready to start creating entry ramps into the market. And I think that will come when we've got, again, a bit more of a track record, some case studies specifically around this, a couple at the very least. Obviously, video is kind of embedded into some existing case studies, but they're not video specific. They're kind of product marketing and organic growth specific. So yeah, I think account expansion is where it lies for now. I think we've been asked a lot, and this is something that we're exploring about podcast services, and that I think may have legs as an entry ramp offering, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is that something that you're going to do?
We're thinking about it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that, again, just signals that have come from your last couple of offerings, just market, customers talking about it, you going out and having a look and seeing if it's viable for your business, just all of these things, just how you've done all the rest of the services, right?
Exactly. Kim, I had like 3 people ask if we did it in the space of 10 days in sales calls and one existing customer. And so that was a signal, I think, to at least explore it. So
what would that even look like if they hired you to do their podcast? Would it be someone from Grizzle acting as the face of the company on their behalf?
It would be someone within the organization that the client organization would be the host. And we just do the production, the actual video production, kind of guest management, outreach, sourcing guests, doing the research on the back end and all that stuff, all the things that we kind of do for our own podcast at the moment. And again, this is where the whole kind of do the thing to sell the thing principle comes down to. We did podcasting for a very specific reason. It was never to really, offer it as a service for other people. But if people are asking for it and we can do it, and that's where the market is going, then why not? And it fits within the umbrella of content marketing.
Yeah. And I guess you could fold it back into what we were talking about before, vertical and horizontal. I mean, a lot of that offering, it sounds like, would be the research, the back end of it, the prep, which, a lot of content marketers would have those transferable skills. So again, it's just something that makes sense rather than just going and doing something, offering PPC. So it goes back to what you were talking about before.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I don't remember what I wrote, but we seem to have landed in some correct direction.
I liked it. When I read it, I thought that makes so much sense.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I just want to ask you about with your team, your makeup. You've talked about how you like to hire freelancers and fractional, especially when you're testing out a new service, and then you've got a team of in-house. And I read that you like to operate with a culture of calm productivity, you called it.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
When did I say that? Interesting. Calm productivity. Our culture is really around, okay, and this is where productizing things becomes super handy to scale, because you can, okay, what is our target profit margin? And what do we need to do in order to meet that? And then basically, I want to build a culture around, I don't give a shit about when you do the work as long as it gets done. And in order to do that, it means you have to be really kind of strict and conscientious about team workload, and also, freelance capacity as well, whether that's hourly or by the deliverable. And so I guess what I mean by calm productivity is, while we still value speed and hard work, we all have lives to live, right? And that's why I think I always want to maintain a remote and asynchronous work culture, because take me, for example, in the last couple of months, I've been really productive early in the morning and then late at night. And then for some reason, I don't know if it's because I'm getting old, I'll have a nap maybe once a week in the middle of the afternoon. I want my teammates to be able to do that as well. Some of them are digital nomads, some of them are parents. I want my head of content to be able to go and pick up her kids at 3 p.m. So that's kind of, I think, where this notion of calm productivity may have come from. It's like work-life balance. Yeah, we're still going to do work that we love, and we're going to do it really well, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to, apply speed as well. And what I mean by that is like experimenting with the new things, taking new things to market. We value speed when it comes to those things, and that might be something I've neglected to mention. But also, yeah, like we don't have to burn ourselves out while drinking from the wishing well.
Does the confidence that you have to have that operation go back to what we were talking about, in terms of like when you set up a new service, you're leaning on the expertise from the freelancer or the fractional help about how long this will take, right? So then you already have a baseline for how long each service will take. And then when you build on that and then it becomes embedded into your workflows, is that confidence that this work's going to get done and I know it's going to take this long and I don't care if you're napping? Is that where it comes from your processes, do you think?
I like that. I don't care if you're napping. Pretty much. Yeah. I think it's also that the timelines and the steps within every project workflow. So obviously we create templates, everything's super systemized, but essentially what we have is like due dates and review dates. And usually those are a day apart, right? We don't, get someone to deliver something in the morning and then have to review it in the afternoon and address that feedback like the next morning. We've kind of set expectations with clients that these things take this long because that's what quality looks like. You need that gap. And it's kind of like, okay, these things take this long, and this is how we kind of space things along the waterfall if we're talking about project management, right? So I think there's a systematic element to it as well as a cultural element to it as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure it like pays back in tenfold when your employees feel like, yeah, I can go and get my kids from school. I can take a nap. I'm not going to let it go.
Yeah, I've outed myself here. I truly have. Yeah.
I love it. I've got one last question because we're nearly out of time. AI, you guys using it in the back end?
We're using
just have to throw it in there.
It has to be done. It wouldn't be a marketing or agency podcast without talking about it.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, we're using it for a lot of workflow specific things, research as well. We're using it as a bit of to steal the term from Erica Schneider, God bless her, a content sparring partner. So for example, we're creating our own LinkedIn post right now. We'll pop it in and we'll ask it to kind of pick holes in our argument, and it'll find biases, and that helps us kind of like refine things. We're not using it for production. It's just consistently proven to be more work than it's worth. We have to spend as much time editing a long form piece of content as it takes to actually create it. Sometimes we might use it for like email copy or something, but that's only because usually it's relatively short. It doesn't take that long to edit. And it's just a way of kind of unblocking like a missing idea or a starting point, right? So yeah, it's mostly research, it's automation workflows, data analysis as well. For like a lot of our SEO projects, like crunching the numbers. Obviously, you have to kind of ask it to check its own work, but it's been super useful for kind of scaling those things up.
I love the idea of using it as like a content sparring partner. That's so you'll throw this post at it and say, this is a draft that I've written. You come back at me with some really constructive feedback.
Yeah, 100%. And if you ask it to be as cutthroat as it possibly can, it will not hold back.
It doesn't hold back. I kind of like it.
Yeah, same.
Tell me what
I don't want to be mollycoddled by a robot.
No, exactly. I don't think they know how to mollycoddle. All right,
No,
Tom.
that's true.
We're at the hour. I'd love it if we could just wrap this up with you telling people where they can find you and find Grizzle.
Absolutely. You can find Grizzle at grizzle.io. And yeah, search for me on LinkedIn, Tom Whatley, Whatley, and feel free to say hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom.
Kim, thanks for having me. Cheers.